assisted when our next president is a very high-powered and awesome woman, which is...
You really think Fury is going to do it?
I'm totally Fury in the United States next November. You know, I think that's going to be a big boost. Not just Hillary I'm talking about, obviously, but just we're getting to a point where, particularly in states like Massachusetts, like for a long time, this was the hardest state to get elected as a woman. It just like, we had this rigid structure and it was so like one party and there were such established pathways of getting into politics that...
And the only governor has been acting, the only female governor has been in the history of the Commonwealth, Jane Swift, who took over for someone who's been elected.
Yeah, and actually was almost impeached basically for having children. I mean, that was...
Look it up.
Yeah, that's basically what happened.
There were childcare issues with... Like,
there were also some minor ethics issues, but I mean, I think basically...
You wondered, this was a male. If this was a... Right, it did seem like they were focusing on that. Yeah.
But no, I think that as perceptions change and as more women see that this is something that like they can do, more voters have become awakened to this as a reality. That like a woman as like the chief law enforcement officer for Massachusetts, people are like, damn straight, yes, that is absolutely who should do this, and I think that's really helping. So. Structurally, we have a lot of work to do just to like create some basic equality, particularly for younger women in the workplace, I think. And then societally, I think changing perceptions of like what is an elected official is moving in the right direction. So I feel pretty optimistic about that.
My name's Dakota. I'm a physical therapy major and go science. And I'm from Dubai, and I was wondering, what's your favorite campaign that you worked on, like throughout your lifetime?
Okay, well, I'm sort of duty-bound to first say my current boss's campaign, Maura Healey's campaign, was an amazing kind of scrappy insurgent race, and I was there from like really the very beginning until the end, and so just having sort of experienced it like very viscerally and emotionally. You know, other than that, I think I would say my favorite campaign.
I guess you could say, like, what was the hardest campaign that you worked on, and then what was like the most enjoyable, like you thought that paid off the most, kind of, like, saw the best results?
Well, I mean, look, here's the thing about campaigns. They're all great and they're all exciting in their own way, but it really helps when you look back on them if you won, right? like in terms of your like memory, it's like much better to win. You just like you immediately forget everything about the campaigns that you worked on and where you lost. Like I can't remember anything about them.
That's like if you're in first, you're last.
I'll tell you though, when I was your age, when I was working on the Kerry campaign, what was amazing about it, and this is why I hope you'll all at least check it out. You don't need to be like a crazy person like I am about this or like Dan's been about this, but there's so much camaraderie in it because there is just like an army of volunteers and interns and younger staff, and like everyone is in their late teens and their early 20s, and it's just you think you're going to save the world, and you know what, you are helping do that, and you get to be part of something that's in the newspaper every day, and that is part of sort of deciding who the decision makers are for our state or our country, and I think that's an incredibly cool thing to do. What happens is if you stay in it long enough, it's a little like, I mean, campaigns are like one of these things where a lot of people do one campaign, and then like some small number of people do two campaigns, and then only like an insane group of circus weirdos stay in for their like third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth campaign. So I don't like how many friends like around me on campaigns anymore. I mean, I do, but like it's a very narrow group. Do you know what I mean? Because like I used to like be with my buddies all the time. I'm like, where did you go?
we recently for our class we did a thing called a court observation where we were supposed to go and attend the court hearing, and afterwards we wrote about our experiences there. And like one of the revolving themes of it was how it compares to like the depiction of the court system in media. So like how it compares to TV shows or like Law and Order, or like movies or anything.
Did you write about how boring it was and how slow it was?
To some extent I have, but
Court is like.
yeah.
For a second there, I'm like, oh no, they're asking me a legal question. Like, oh boy.
No,
Like, I was gonna-
so I'm sorry. We just both interrupted you.
And I'm ripping on his legal skills.
I'm a real lawyer, but I've never practiced law before, and I work in a law office, and I don't really practice law there either. So this is a recurring joke.
Yeah, and this is like a lighthearted question compared to the others. But how does campaigning compare to how it's depicted in the media? So like say.
Great, but tell me what you mean. Because there's documentaries,
Yeah,
there's
of course.
I
mean like
there's movies.
House of Cards or like Our Brand is Christ. It's like a
He
movie that
pushed
came out.
someone actually on the T-tracks right
Right
minutes ago. That's why he was late.
Right. He murdered a Globe reporter.
Looks like we got some House of Cards fans.
So, I think, there's an expression about how life imitates art. And I sometimes feel like this is really true in politics. I sometimes like experience our business as though like people are like doing their best impression of like their favorite West Wing character in the way that they are living their life and the way that they are acting as professionals. I think that there are enough sort of glamour moments in part of our business, like big crowd events with people waving things and like these made-for-camera moments with people who like kiss babies and things like that, that sometimes that is very accurately depicted. But like everything, it's mostly just like a lot of grunt work, like that comes between the exciting moments. So
The long drive between events.
yeah, there's like a lot of driving and like trying to like figure out like where you are, even because you like are in a town which does not have self-service and you long ago like don't have any maps in your car anymore.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like hard work of like going out there and having individual interactions with voters, or like editing policy positions, or drafting, blast emails, and just like when I was talking about the drudgery of the money raising. So I think there's a little magic in our business. I do. I think it can be very exciting and very inspiring. You guys are a little young for this probably, but did any of you happen to go or be taken to President Obama's inauguration in 2008, 2009? So, were you there? Yeah. So like, for people who were like, there were like 3 million people went to the Washington Mall to see the president take the oath of office. And it was, I think, for everybody there, like one of the most crowded, it's definitely the biggest crowd I've ever been in my life.
Yep.
And you just felt like you were a part of this like really exciting community of like, just like the country was like there in this place at that time to celebrate this moment. And I think that politics does create those moments from time to time. And so that's not really a House of Cards version of the business, but it is there.
Hi, I'm Natalie. I'm an international affairs major and I'm from Philadelphia. So I was wondering, do you see any downsides to getting involved like in college now? It is a great opportunity to get involved with like young Democrats, young Republicans, but I personally been worried since I'm more interested in the foreign policy aspect than like domestic is more like a personal. I'm interested in the foreign policy aspect. So I'm worried that getting involved with one party might hurt me in the future, and I was wondering your opinion on that.
Anna, you're going to say that there's only one party to be
No.
affiliated with.
Look, I think as a general matter, I mean, I've got some friends who have gone to like the Fletcher School, and I've got friends who are in the Foreign Service. This is like working for the State Department at like an embassy somewhere. They're either like funding guerrilla warfare, or they're like stamping passports. Exactly. Yeah.
Basically the two jobs.
No, there's probably somebody who would say this is wrong. Here's what I think. I think that demonstrating an interest in civic life and sort of policy making and public service is always a good thing. And the mechanisms you have at your disposal to like engage in sort of foreign service work on a campus that is as global as Northeastern are probably vast, and so you should look into those, right? Are you like creating a problem for yourself career-wise if you like volunteer on a local election? No.
And
you are.
And let me just say that Madeleine Albright was basically like a Democratic Party operative in the 80s, and things worked out for her. She became Secretary of State. So at a higher level, yes, you're going to align yourself with one party, but I think Mike's right. You're not going to keep future opportunities away.
Particularly because people give everybody, I mean, you guys are so young. You don't like feel that right now, but like you're so young professionally that like people just give you a pass on like whatever you've done until you're like 25, and then they're like, what have you been doing recently, right? And then it turns out like you were like a ski bum for 4 years, and they're sort of like, well, that's weird because you're 29 now. But you know, until then, it's like whatever, you know. Yeah.
LJ from upstate New York, and I'm a management major. I was wondering, seeing that you've been involved with numerous campaigns, has this inside look turned you off towards political office, or have you just become so passionate about campaigns that you're staying involved in them?
Oh, you mean like me personally?
Yeah, just your view of it has. Are you?
Oh, am I cynical about office holding?
Well, no, but then the other one is maybe the other, the Mario Cuomo, you campaign in poetry, you govern in prose. The other thing, right now you're serving in government. You've had both of these roles. Maybe that's the other question.
Yeah.
The reality of
or
government
like
versus
having
campaigning.
seen it from the inside, like am I more cynical about it or something?
And are
Is that
there different skills for campaigning and serving in office?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just like you've seen both sides, you've seen it, and you've seen the inside of it. Do you just like working on campaigns more, or do you just think that you don't really want to do anything with like actually serving in a government position?
Oh, okay. So I should say, so like right now I work for the government,
I mean,
and
more so like an elected official. Sorry.
No, and I see your next point though is the next campaign
like,
cycle.
Yeah,
What about
or
you?
something?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
Brookline Town Meeting is waiting.
Let's
There's
do it.
someone who had that job in the 50s. His name is Mike Dukakis. He's
amazing.
raising.
Yeah, no, very hard to, not easy to get elected to town meeting in Brookline.
I know.
But I live in Somerville, so
Somerville Town Meeting.
no town meeting in Somerville.
Okay.
So look, I think that a lot of people in our business, like decide that they might be interested in serving in public office. Some people like know it right from the beginning. They're like, what I want to do is to serve, and the way I want to serve is to put my name out there and run and sort of like, drive an agenda. Some of us are like, as there's been more professionalization in the business, and there are, campaign professionals and policy professionals, like people like doing the staff work. I mean, people like working in the industry, just like how in the movie industry, not everybody wants to be an actor, and like a lot of people want to go work for the Red Sox, and we're not talking about people who want to play second base, right? So, like when somebody says I want to go work for the Red Sox, I don't think they're talking about playing second base. I
And
think
when they're lawyers, they think it's so exciting, but then the legal job is like drafting contracts with Aramark over like soda.
I actually think it would be really badass to work at the Red Sox in their legal office. I would like maybe be a real lawyer if I could do that. Yeah, I do. No, I do. I think he has a great job. It's all like the most complicated contracting work in the world, right? So yeah, I think like some people like being staff, and I'm one of those people. I'm not. But Eric, who was here, is a great example. Eric was a White House staffer, and he, worked for some incredibly important people in the Obama administration, and was really at the center of some impactful times and some important decision making. And then he was kind of like, "This is something I want to do, and the way I'm going to do it is to go home to a small town in Western Massachusetts and run for local office." Now he's got a pretty big local office, but.
And it's a pretty good job for your first run.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's on the fast track, but, so, yeah.
We have time for a couple more.
I have a easy question, a hard one. You want easy, hard, or both of them?
You choose. We'll try to figure out if it's the easy one or the hard one. All right, go.
Okay. What would you say is the number one piece of advice you would give for someone who is going to run a campaign?
That's the hard one or the easy one? That's probably supposed to be, is that the easy one?
That's the easy one.
Okay.
You got it right.
The number one piece of advice for somebody who is going to go run a campaign is do not spend any money. Like, don't spend any money. You think you need that thing, you don't. Get somebody to give it to you, or you do not need it because you will need the money for something else. I mean, and that's like a sort of a sad statement about the state of affairs in American life, that
We talk
the
about
money
too
is
much money. Yeah.
money is so important, but like it's true. And the only thing, watch this. When was the last time anybody watched the 6 o'clock news? You guys are like, what is that? What is
60
what
Minutes
is
was
the
on
news?
after the Pats game the other day.
60 Minutes is a great show.
It was
It is
good.
not the local
But then,
news though.
but I mean, there was some news segments in there.
But did they cut in? They like cut in
Yeah,
for a moment?
like
All
on
right.
the commercials.
All right, like during the commercial. Which were like fast forwarding. So here's the deal. Like there's a massive generation of people who are not even participating in this kind of television watching, and yet if you are running for office, that kind of programming with the advertising you can buy on that kind of programming is still the only way to effectively raise your name recognition in a big election. It's one thing if you're Donald Trump and everybody kind of knows who you are already, but most people don't start off that way. So, just to put it in context, for Maura Healey's campaign, we talked to you about the 3,000 a day. Our goal in the 12 months was to have enough left over after every other expense, every salary, every rent check, every office supply, every piece of pizza, whatever, to have $800,000. And then we would spend that $800,000, and we did, on a 30-second ad that ran for 13 days. That's all we could afford. And it cost $800,000. We didn't do any online advertising, we didn't do any advertising in the paper or in magazines, we didn't do any radio advertising. Why? Because we couldn't afford it because we needed $800,000 to run a television ad. We could only afford one, and it ran for 13 days. So that's just a comment about that. So don't spend any money, that's the easy question.
Cool. All right, you want that one?
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked about how politics are changing, and last week Eric Lesser brought up a point about how the parties are becoming a little bit more polarized, in particular because of the way that information is distilled through the media. So I guess, one, with your face, I'll ask, do you agree with that? And two, where do you think the future of the political parties in the U.S. is going? And do you think that we even need them?
Ooh.
Wow, all right.
That
I think that there was 15 years ago, there was a narrative that the sort of two major parties were kind of indistinguishable.
Do you remember who said that a lot?
Like Ralph Nader.
Ralph Nader,
Yeah.
who ironically helped one party win.
There was a narrative. I don't think people say that right now. I think basically people see some pretty stark differences between the parties on social issues and like on economic issues, obviously as well. And then I think generally speaking, there's even some differences in sort of the approach to foreign policy, which for a while was sort of still, there was a lot more uniformity just because it's hard to like leave like real partisan distinctions. Remember, I mean, this is me just like politicking at you right now, just as food for thought. The president and the State Department inked out an agreement, a sort of nuclear deal with Iran, okay? And every like non-affiliated, non-aligned, like foreign policy expert in the world said it was the most important, that signing the deal was essential for like the health of the world. That like it was a must sign. And then the deal went to Congress and not a single Republican voted for it. Something that the entire global community, national security community, said had to be supported, right? And Democrats were like, look, I don't really like this deal, because like, I don't like Iran. They say a lot of mean things about people. They don't recognize Israel. They like have a lot of people in their senior levels of government who think like America should be destroyed. It seems like a bad group of people to make a deal with, but I'm gonna vote for it anyway because it's essential for like world freedom. And then like nobody voted for it, for the Republicans. So like, that's weird to me.
And that didn't happen during the Cold War.
No, I mean, we have right now the Republican Party is in a weird phase. I don't know if it's a phase or not, but it's in this weird sort of, where the most sort of energetic sort of cohort in this party doesn't really believe in kind of the traditional understanding of sort of kind of how you govern in a democratic society, where you govern alongside people who disagree with you, right? In fact, like, what used to be kind of a hallmark of being like an effective politician, which would be like cutting a deal, kind of like figuring out a way to like achieve some compromise that got you something you wanted, got somebody else something that they wanted.
That works against you in the primary.
Like, people are not supportive of that. And we see a little bit of that, you know, in the Democratic Party too, where you have liberals who are saying, I'm like tired of deal cutting, like our principles need to be, you know, we need to stand for our principles absolutely, but less so. So where are they going? I don't think they're going anywhere. I mean, I don't think they're going out of style, but it'll be interesting to see, you know, I think kind of what happens with the Tea Party is the big question right now in terms of, I mean, look at the Republican Party right now with Trump, right? I mean, I think dismissed, maybe like in June or July, as sort of a flash in the pan moment, he's got a decent chance of it. He may not be the Republican nominee, but he's like gonna win some delegates.
Right.
And this is a guy who, you know, a sizable percentage of the electorate cannot imagine as president. Forget about imagine voting for. There's a difference, right? I can like, there are a lot of people I can imagine as president who will like, I would never vote for, right? People can't like imagine that, like, so that's weird. They're in like a weird spot.
Yeah, but the point is that McGovern represented sort of the reaches, and the party started to move gradually toward the center. And the last time this happened with the Republican in terms of being out there on the right was '64. Barry Goldwater, who was basically campaigning against portions of the Civil Rights Act and said extremism in defense of liberty is a virtue, right? No vice. I think you might have a moment where if in this election cycle, that would be 08, 12, 16, where if the Republicans nominate someone who's out of the mainstream and loses handily, that there might be some regrouping, reorganization, but sometimes it takes that. There are so many problems with the political system, but one of them is the dominant role in the primaries that less moderate voters play. But anyway, in terms of the presidential election, I think it would have to be a pretty bad loss for regrouping. And the Democrats moved to the center, in the late 80s and early 90s. Obama has kept them somewhat center-left, so that there's not as much shift. But I think the GOP might need another loss to sort of regroup, right? Because the primary system means that moderate GOP politicians are just unable to make it out of primaries. So, I think. I'll say one thing. I don't know that this is gaining any traction anywhere, and we had to change our constitution and all sorts of things, which is not easy to do. But I hope someday we
I think we gotta, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about this. I think we've gotta scrap the electoral college. It's like, the way our presidential campaigns work now is you campaign in like 7 places.
I was gonna say, some would say it's crazy that there are 50 campaigns, but there aren't really 50. You have a big board with a map, and you X out certain states, and and then Pennsylvania, Florida, Ohio,
Yeah, you have
Michigan,
and,
New Hampshire.
And let's be clear about what we're talking about. We're not just, look, it's not like most people are, not gonna, first of all, most people can follow the national news, and it's not like you can't, see what the president or some candidate is talking about on television just because they're not in your state that day, right? But what we're talking about is like you are telling we have only one popularly elected national figure, right? The president.
Sometimes.
Yeah. We have only one. There's only one office in the country, well, 2 with the vice president, where everybody gets to vote, right? And that makes it just totally different than every other job in the United States. And yet, like, the perception that our votes have no incremental value in a place like Massachusetts or a place like Georgia or a place like California or Texas.
Which are big states.
It just sends a really sour message about the meaning of participating in the democracy, I think. So I think we would just, people are always saying things like, oh no, I vote in Wisconsin with my parents or something like that, right? As though they should, why should you have to have parents who live in Wisconsin in order to feel like your vote has meaning? It's just really think that that's gotta change. It's very and it didn't used to be like that. I mean, there just used to be more states that were kind of in play, so.
And we've sorted, they call it the big sort. We've sort of sorted ourselves and lived in communities. For example, if you want to live free or die, there's a state for you. So, all right, listen, this was great. Please join me in thanking Mike.